الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرفع البلاء عن المسلمين في كل مكان وخاصة في غزة التي هي درة للإسلام والمسلمين بعدما رأينا من عجائب الأفعال التي لم تكن لتحصل إلا بتوفيق الله سبحانه وتعالى. Brothers and sisters, this is not a session about what's going on in Gaza or Palestine. It's a session of what we as Muslims live in America can and should do, and what the Islamic institution in America need to do. The events mostly are known for everyone, and we need to be precise in what we transfer or transmit information. Because if you are not truthful, people will not take you seriously. I just pointed to Jazakallah Khair, the brother who gave the talk between Maghrib and Isha, because I was watching online that after the war has started, there was talk of providing money, but the US could not provide money because the House has no speaker. They cannot even spend $100 except for certain cases that already spent. Remember, one of the problems that they had when they were on the verge of shutdown, there was $3 billion allocated for Ukraine, and they did not agree on it, and we almost had a shutdown. And to avoid the shutdown, they removed the $3 billion to Ukraine. So whoever had brought the news most likely was talking about previous things, because the House has been without a speaker now for more than a week. And to spend money, it's the House, that the US House of Representatives, the Congress, have to provide the money. Yes, they talked about allocating $2 billion, but they could not spend it. However, moving the ships and giving arms and all of this, that's a different story. Now, why this is a different case than before? We had cases that happened to the Muslims before in the US and outside. Why this is different? What we have seen is very strange, and I would say unprecedented. I do not remember, I have been here for the last 50 years, 50, and did not see anything like this. I'll give you a few examples. So this firm, which is a famous law firm, extend an offer to a lawyer who just graduated. Then they discover that the lawyer, after putting the offer to him or to her, I do not know the name, they have put on the social media that Israel is to blame for what had happened because of the way they treated the Palestinians. What had happened? They withdrew the job offer from him or her. This is new. Where a company wants to hire you, say, wait, where do you stand from this issue? And this was in the Wall Street Journal, so we are not making this thing up. In another case, a CEO of a company sent an email to the employees saying, each one of you go to your social media post and put support for Israel. We did not see this before. In another case, CEO would ask the employees, each one need to donate $50 at least to an Israeli cause. We did not see this before. So there is this new environment in this regard that we need to be aware of. So it's a different game altogether. We cannot just say, oh, this happened before. That's one. Secondly, there is a change in the public opinion in the US, no doubt. When I came to this country in 1978, you rarely has a Muslim view on the issue of Palestine, or even a Palestinian representative to talk about Palestine. It's always given the Israelis' view, always. Some of you say, oh, the media is biased now. I said, wait a minute. I mean, you need to know the old days. Now it's way much better that at least you have some, CNN and major organization, they bring Muslim view. I think one of our sisters who used to be here, the wife of Brother Yassin, mashallah, she's a writer, she's from Gaza. She was on CNN. Also on CNN was the Al-Barghouthi from Palestine, and so on and so forth. This was not before. So this is what driving the Jews crazy. Why? Because they want this narrative only to come from them. What's happening there? We mentioned the two lies in Jum'ah. The first lie is Palestine was a land without people, and Jews were people without a land, so they got it. That was a big lie because hundreds of thousands were kicked out. Just go to Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and beyond, and you will see there are millions of them who were ejected from their land. And as the brother mentioned yesterday, he said there was a key in our home, a key out of the ordinary. The old homes had large keys. So he said to his dad, what's this key? Why do you keep this? He said, this is the key to our home that we were ejected from. We're going to keep it because we're going to go back. Of course, they have changed the locks and the keys all along. But this mentality, and you will see some of them hanging the keys. This view was not clear here. So in the recent poll by the Pew Research, they asked US adults about what's your view of Israel? That was the question. 4 out of 10 who are under 30, they said we have a favorable opinion of Israel. Get this. It means that 6 out of 10, they do not have a good opinion of Israel. That's huge. But those who are under 30, now their parents, the same research, the same poll, their parents have about 7 to 8 out of 10 favorable opinion of Israel. So the tide is changing. And there was a poll, I just heard it coming from home on the NPR, that almost 48% were not in support of the Israelis given this effect. But I did not see the whole poll in this regard. So when we realize that there is this change, there's shift in the public opinion in the USA, we need to realize that, yeah, sometimes we'll need patience a little more because things are changing and the tide is changing. So what is it that we can do as individuals and what is it that we can do as institutions? For the institutions, we need to realize a few things. In no way an Islamic masjid, Islamic center, or an Islamic school, or an Islamic institution in the US should get into an issue of sending money to an organization that the US consider, I do not like to use the word, but this is their word, they consider it so-called terrorist. Because it's a crime in the US to send money to such an organization is a crime. Whether it is Hezbollah or Hamas or Islamic Jihad or Taliban or what have you, you cannot send them money. So you're gonna find some announcements in somewhere on the web that you can contribute to Hamas by cryptocurrency. And no Muslim in the US or organization should do this. This is illegal and can get you in jail for a long time. You need to be aware of this. However, there are organizations that help the people of Gaza, help the people of Afghanistan, help the people of Lebanon. And the Islamic organization need to check. There is a list that the US government approves. Like, for example, Islamic Relief USA, Nasmat Amal, Bayt al-Mal, Zakah Fund, all of those are approved. You can send money through them and you have no issue, whether you write a check or a credit card or give them cash. As a masjid, talking now as a masjid. Now this also applies to individuals. This applies to individuals. Somebody approached you and said, I have a channel and I can get your money to Hamas. No, I'm not interested. I'm gonna send it through a charitable organization. Because most likely, this guy who's approaching you is an FBI agent. And we have went through suffering in America 10 years ago when 30 cases were brought against young Muslims who ended up in jail for a long time. There are brothers from our own community here who have spent 16 and 14 years in jail, and some of them going to spend 30 plus and 40 plus. Why? Because the FBI came to them and said, you know, we need to do something as Muslims. You know what's happening. So they got two Muslims Muslims. One was immigrant and was indigenous. Got them weapons. Here in Raleigh, North Carolina, got them weapons and told them we have a land that we can train, and get them to say things that, oh, we need to do this against the US, and we need to do this. And then after they got all the evidence, they got the 7 of them, the 8th already left to Pakistan, where a drone killed him in the mountains of Pakistan by himself. Brother Jude, may Allah have mercy on him. And those people did not do anything. They just got them to say things, to train that we are training for this. Similarly here, somebody would approach in this regard of give me money for Hamas or for Islamic Jihad. No, no, no. In fact, you should inform the Imam that such and such person is doing this, so that we make the community aware of this person. Because as I said, most likely he's an FBI agent. We had this also happen in California, where this so-called white American convert came to the masjid and started talking to the young people about jihad. And of course, the head of the masjid called CARE, said, you know, we have this person who coming here, pretend to be a Muslim and talking to the kids and this and that. So they called the FBI. They said, there's this guy who comes to the masjid and keep talking to the young people about jihad. The FBI said, oh yeah, okay, thank you. That's what happened. Yeah? He's talking to people about jihad in the masjid. Okay, thank you. No question asked. Why? Because they sent him. And they are paying him. Later, when this thing got to court, he admitted he's working for the FBI. He's not a Muslim. They told him, you know, pretend to be a Muslim and try to get kids. When I said kids, you know, 16 and 17 and 18, because they are still kids in this country. You go to meet a Gazan who is 4-year-old, he will sell the bulk of them in the market and they would not know it. Because, you know, we are raised here on TikTok and all of these things. The moral of all of this is that as Muslims, first of all, we need to be cautioned before we talk what are the things that can be done. So as masajid and as individual in this regard. If you put a statement on social media saying people should join Hamas or should join Islamic Jihad, that's a crime. If you say something to the effect, because in this country, by the way, and if you try to be secretive over the web, that's also an issue. Because this country tells you there's no need to do secret stuff because things are legal. What's illegal in this country? It's illegal to call for the throw of the US government by force. That's illegal. You go to jail. But if you call for, we need to change this government, we need to change this old man المخرفن في the White House, nobody would care about what you say. But the moment that you said we need to use force, that's a crime in the US. The moment that you handle money to do something along the lines of what we mentioned, take some money from somebody or give money for somebody from that cause, again, that's a crime. If a person, imagine this, in the US, according to the law, you can be an agent for any country. A person can work as an agent for any country. You can be an agent for Russia, for North Korea, for South Korea, for any country in the world, as long as you go and register, I am an agent for this country, and they pay me $50,000 each 6 months. Totally legal, and you pay taxes for it. Even if it is their enemy. Even if it's for enemy. So they said, why do you need to do secret stuff? If you want to be an agent for someone, you can be an agent for someone. So I'm just giving samples of that we are in a different environment. The bulk of us here are immigrants. So what we are used to is certain things back home. Here it's totally different. Nobody can come to you in your home or in the streets, a policeman or an FBI agent or an SBI agent, and says, you know, I do not really like your name. Your name is Muhammad. You are under arrest. It would not happen. Or he comes to you and says, you know, you are this or that. In fact, they cannot come to your home and search the home and enter the home without a court order. So if they come to your home, oh, want to enter the home? No, I do not want you to enter my home. If I have nothing to hide, go and get me a court order and you can. This is what you can do against the head of the FBI. So back home, you know, in many of our countries, including, you know, Palestinian territory, they can grab somebody from home and put him in jail for 10 years and nobody would know about him. So here the situation is different. They cannot come to you and say, oh, you were in a demonstration to support Palestine and Gaza, so you are under arrest. It will not happen. However, if you are there and you said certain things, then you can be prosecuted. To be in a demonstration and start saying, oh, we need to kill all those tick, 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 tick. Oh, you know, we need to give money and send that money to Hamas, and I'm doing a fundraising for, I mean, that will, of course, be troublesome. But they would need, again, this thing is not just somebody to pick you up from the street and come and take you. And inshallah, next week we are planning, Imam Muammar, to talk to a lawyer to talk about your rights in this country. So I will not go beyond this. Somebody will come next week, a lawyer, to talk about these things. Now, what we need also from masajid to do is to educate the Muslims about the issue of Palestine. There are hot issues that can blow up any time. You know, when the British left the Muslim world, they left 3 problems. Until now, we are still suffering from them. When the British left the Muslim world, they left 3 problems. The problem of Palestine, they gave it to the Jews, and we are still suffering. Kashmir, because when they divide all the India between India and Pakistan, they left Kashmir to be decided. We still having the suffering in Kashmir. And the third issue is South Sudan. Those issues are not new. So the Muslim community need to be educated on such issues so that when the time comes, we are aware. We know now how the abuse that the Muslims in India get. And we know that there is now a campaign in America between the Zionist supporters and the Hindus. We need to be aware of what is going on. We need to be educated. I understand not everyone, but some of the people who are taking the lead, they need to know what is happening. So the masajid need to play a role in this regard. However, the masajid are scared. A brother called me 2 days ago and he said, you know, our masjid want me to give a talk on Palestine. I said, good. He said, but they only want to understand and know about history. Nothing about what's going on. Nothing about the political situation. Nothing about Zionists. Nothing. They just want to know the history of Palestine. Umar al-Khattab conquered it. Salah ad-Din this and this. But they do not want anything else. Why? Why this fear of talking about issues when those issues being discussed at synagogues, being discussed in churches, being discussed in universities, being discussed in think tanks, being discussed in all the media? Why the masajid are scared to discuss these things? Is it a question of we want to be safe? What's wrong with it? After all, you know, we are suffering in the Western world because of this thing, that's called freedom of expression. Your First Amendment. Somebody stand in front of the masjid and curse the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You cannot do anything about it. I remember when one of those government representatives came here, or was it a lawyer, came to Raleigh, and the brothers were outraged. You know, how could those people curse the Prophet ﷺ and you guys doing nothing? He said, because we have the freedom of speech. Anybody can say whatever they want. Which is not the case, for example, in Europe. In here, it's almost, you know, unlimited. You can stand in the middle of NC State and say all the things that you want to say about Biden and his cronies. Or about Trump and what, you know, a con man and all of this. Nobody would care in terms of authority. Somebody may come and have a fight with you. That's a different story. So why the masajid are scared from having those teaching lessons to make the people aware, especially the young, who will be the agents of change of this image of Islam and Muslims and Islamic causes in America. I mean, this is the minimum that masajid can do. But you know, in many of the masajid, even the word politics is banned. Although the Prophet ﷺ in his masjid, he was reciting غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, talking about the battle between the Romans and the Persians, and the Romans were defeated by the Persians, and then the Romans will be victorious. And the discussion between Abu Bakr and the kuffar on this, and the Prophet ﷺ, the issue of Abyssinia, and the Prophet's awareness of the king there, of just king. I mean, those issues were discussed in masajid and among the Muslims. So why we are making our masajid different? You hear this word, brother, I am coming to masjid for spirituality. I want to make dua, I want to feel this. Yeah, I mean, that's one way where you come to the masjid and feel it. But the masjid, you discuss the affairs of the people and the ummah in the masjid. That's what the masjid is for. That's what the khutbah al-Jum'ah is for. Because you need to make the people aware of it. There's a hikmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said there are 5 daily prayers. Try to make it in the masjid so that the jama'ah get together, discuss their shu'un, their affairs. There's a Jum'ah. All the men are required to attend every Friday. And there's one day, or 2 days I should say, in the Eid, where the whole brothers and sisters, males and females, children, women, get to the Salatul Eid. And then there's this big conference, once in the lifetime, for the ummah to gather on Arafat, on the Hajj. Why? Because this ummah want to discuss its own affairs. Discuss what is concerning them. Because the issues that are in any place would affect us. Just like when after 9/11, how many people around the world were concerned about the Muslims, what will happen to us, the Muslims in America, and people, and even, see people in Muslim governments for the first time stood and asked the US government to look after the Muslims and this and this and that. We are one body. So if the masjid does not take care of these issues, who gonna take care? Where they gonna be educated in this regard? Some people said we should avoid controversial subjects. Yes, but what do you mean by controversial subject? Is the issue of Palestine a controversial subject? Is the issue of the Islamism of Kashmir a controversial subject? Is the suppression of Muslims in India and China a controversial subject? Those issues, all the Muslims should agree on in this regard. So masajid has no excuse but to discuss these issues. When it comes to Gaza, you need to educate the Muslim on what is going on in Gaza. Now, on the individual level, when it comes to education, my advice again is for the people to get educated on this issue. We were discussing to have some activities on campuses, but what they discover is, we do not really know much. So if we're gonna be on campus and talk to the non-Muslims about Gaza and Palestine, we really do not know what to say. I mean, that's problematic. For young Muslims who are at the age of universities, who have not much to say or explain, it is problematic. I do not expect everybody to go and learn about Levon affair, which I mentioned in the khutbah, Levon. What's the Levon affair? I mention it to certain people because they need to understand the depth of this issue. Levon affair was when the Israeli intelligence bombed synagogues in Egypt and killed Jews in the synagogues and told the world, the Muslims in Egypt, the Egyptians are killing the Jews. And just go on Google anywhere, Levon affair, Levon. So when I explain, I do not imagine that, or expect everybody to know about this. But this will explain why, when you have 150 prisoners, Jewish prisoners from, army and others in Gaza, that they will bomb and kill all of them and they don't care. Because the life for them is not worth. They are religious? Not really. They are nationalists. Those people do not care about religion. In fact, the religious people in Palestine go to this Beit Shamsha, they have Palestinian flags. They have Palestinian flags in the neighborhood. And they say they make dua for Allah to end this occupation. They do it for religious reasons, of course, because some of them believe that we should not have an entity until the Messiah come back. But they don't think that those people who are in power, those extremists, are really religious or motivated by religion. Not at all. It's this love of power. I have control over all these Palestinians. I can take my machine gun and go and burn houses. Nobody will face me because the Palestinians are not armed in the West Bank except for buckets in this regard. So understanding the history from this aspect, we can understand those things. On our own, we need to be aware. Now, you cannot educate yourself on TikTok or just watching videos. We need to go to the old habit and do some reading. I know this is this is tough on the new generation, but that's how you get to know, how you get information. How did the issue of Kashmir develop? And we have discussed this issue of one of the Thursday night sessions. I discuss, many of these issues, try to educate. Because basically, we as an ummah, we need to be aware. Aware. The Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who's awake, not caring about the affairs of the ummah, he is not one of them. Islam did not spread around the world so that we are in Raleigh, North Carolina. I looked at the people at Jum'ah here. I could see 50 countries represented here. How did Islam get all over the place? By sitting in the masjid making dua and closing my eyes and making tasbih? Of course not. Of course not. Who was Qutuz? Who was Salah ad-Din? Who was Khalid ibn Walid? These days they tell you might is right. If I have the power, then I can do whatever I want. Islam did not go that way. Islam still will call for justice. We need to be aware of what Islam is all about. When we talk about Jews and Palestine, how many of us know that when Islam came to Palestine, the Jews could not enter Jerusalem? The Romans have forbid the Jews from entering Jerusalem. So the patriarch, among the conditions that he put on Umar radiallahu anh, that the Jews are not to come to Jerusalem and they are not to live in Jerusalem. So Umar said radiallahu anh, I accept they will not live in the city, but they should be allowed to come in and out. It was the Muslims. Where did I learn this? I'll tell you, from the encyclopedia. I was reading about this. I did not read it, unfortunately, in Muslim sources, because we have lost track of major events. When the Jews had this issue in Europe, the hatred of Jews, and they went through the Holocaust, and then the Europeans want to solve this Jewish problem. What did they do? They agree to move them to Palestine with the big lies that we are mentioning. Now Muslims have taken care of Jews all their history, and Christians and others, their places of worship. Where is a record in the history of the Muslims that Muslims enter churches and break their idols? We do not agree with idols, right? Islamically, it's forbidden. But Islam says, leave the people in their churches and their synagogues. Well, recently you have seen many events where people enter churches and break their idols. Why? Because now they are armed with this nationalism. That we are superior, we can do whatever we want. Forget about Biden, forget about Macron, forget about those people. We are in charge, we do whatever we can. And whatever we want to do. Spitting on the Christians in Jerusalem. How many Americans know about this? Yes, it's all over the internet. But very few know about it. Spitting on the churches. And this jerk who is the head of a council for the settlers come and say, oh, this is an old Jewish habit. Meaning it's okay, this is our habit. I mean, you would expect outrage. And when they are in trouble, they are calling on the Christian, so-called Christian leaders. There they spit on them, and here they come to milk them out of money in this regard. We need to be aware of these issues. Islam have utmost respect for all religions, although we do not agree with them. I mean, think about this. 1400 years ago, Islam came on aqidat al-tawheed, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and no longer the king or the Khalifa or the whoever in charge has a blood that goes to the gods. And he owns everything. Islam came with a totally different system, gave plenty of space for the non-Muslim to live by. We need to understand these things so we can explain them to the non-Muslims. We need them to see what this Islam is all about. When the Jews have no place to go in Spain, after they kicked out of Spain, where did they go? They went to live under Islam, under the Ottomans, because they know Muslims will protect them. It's a matter of principle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, if you want to live under the state of Islam, you have your space. You practice your deen, your relationship within your community is based on your deen, have no issue with you. And what we see in Palestine, we have seen during the events where there was like pilgrimage coming, the police was knocking Christian women on the ground. Some of you have seen images of Muslim women being knocked on the ground just for carrying the Quran and saying La ilaha illallah. That's what they did. Because they bring the settlers. How many American knows that settlements are illegal? The US government considered the settlements illegal. UN called settlements illegal. Japan called settlements illegal. Russia called settlements illegal. Britain, France, all those countries, settlements are illegal. What is a settlement? It's a group of people that come and establish a village or a city on an occupied land. There are 200 of them. If we do not know this information, how we can communicate to the people? If I'm gonna go and said, you know, oh yeah, Palestine, they are under oppression and this and that, that does not add up. It does not make an effect. Another aspect, we can help with collecting money and giving money to the charities that goes and do work in Gaza, as I said, within the framework that exists. And alhamdulillah, this community has been generous for whenever there is a cause, from the floods in Pakistan, to the earthquake in Morocco, the floods to the Rohingya and Bangladesh. MashaAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you all you and the community lots of khair, lots of money goes there. And a brother told me today, we have not seen this collection of money today for many years. It just means that the community is there in this regard. So let me not elaborate on this further in terms of supporting with money. Another aspect is the actions on campuses. Campuses where the future leaders are. The Zionist supporters in America were today getting majnoon, crazy, because there was a big gathering at Columbia University. That's my alma mater in New York City. That's where I studied for my bachelor in nuclear engineering. You know, it's politically oriented campus. They say the numbers that came today in Columbia University to support Palestine, never seen from the days of Vietnam. And you know, Columbia University played a major role in the Vietnam when there was, you know, big demonstration and the government interfered and this and that. It's history. But again, if we want to shape the thinking of the next generation, campuses is the place to be. And you know, students need to understand that they have a duty. But again, if you do not have the information, what is it that you're going to do? Of course, invite someone who can help, get educated on this matter as much as you can, so you can present it in this angle. Again, this helps future down the road. We are not counting on 5 years or 10 years, we are counting more. Another aspect, your children go to the public school. Yesterday, I got a call from my sister. She said, our cousin went to this public school where the principal called for a minute of silence for all the students for the innocent people of Israel. I said, the father should go today to meet with the principal and said that minute of silence should be for the innocent people, including the innocent people of Palestine who are being killed. Because in this country is for everyone. This is a country for everyone. Why do you come as a principal and ask for a minute of silence for one side and not the other? You have Muslim students too. I give an example, but this is beyond just one example. We need to make our children aware. If some issues pertaining to Islam and Muslims, bring them to our attention as parents. And if the parents do not know what to do, consult with the masjid. We have people, lawyers, we have others that we consult and know about this. There was an incident also that happened a few weeks back here in Raleigh, in one of the schools, where a teacher came and said, we're going to talk today about September 11. A group of Muslims came and did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So alhamdulillah, the family is an asset, a good family in this regard. They are aware. They wrote a long letter to the principal saying basically this teacher should be fired because you are putting our children to be bullied. And maybe, go beyond that. Because people know they are Muslims. And this is elementary school. This is elementary school. That this is not accepted. As Muslims, we have to be vocal about these issues when it comes to the school because they impact our own children. And instead of the principal coming and saying, oh yeah, we apologize, this is wrong and we'll do this. Said, oh, this is a new teacher. She was in HR, human resources before, and we needed teachers, we brought her. I told the sister, call care or contact a lawyer. Because that's not acceptable. That's not an answer. That's not an answer. You come and say, a group of people hijacked planes and did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you start by saying, group of Muslims? I mean, we've seen guys going all the time and shooting in churches. Black people being killed in churches. We see this all the time. And it's usually a young white American, quote unquote Christian. Do you hear that, a Christian, a white Christian went? No, you do not hear this word. Why when it comes to Muslim there's this issue? Always. Why? Because we are not telling our story. Somebody else is telling our story. As I said, alhamdulillah, things are way much better than before. But we need to do more in this regard. Another aspect is networking. Networking. I mentioned a few weeks back when the Muslims in Canada got together and decided on the first day of school in June. The first day in June, not of school, but the first day in June of school. The so-called Pride Month. The Canadian Muslims agreed that we are not going to send our children tomorrow to school. And in Canada, it's different than the USA. Some of the school districts, 40% are Muslims. So they want to send a message to the school board and to the teachers and to the government. We do not want our children to participate in the affairs and the things that the people, friends of the Qawm Lut, do at campuses in public schools. And it was a strong message. Many of the schools were semi-empty. Now, can we in the US have this network? Yeah, but we are not. Because, every masjid is a khilafah by itself. Every masjid is a state by itself. Every masjid is even within communities, forget about on the level of the states. So this issue would need networking because the challenges down the road that's coming from the cooperation of the supporters of the Zionists in America and the Hindus, they are getting together and you are sure when they work together, it's not for the interest of the Muslims. So the Muslims would need to look for after their interests. There are people who are calling to write to the elected officials and the White House and this and voice the support. And there are people who are doing all sorts of things. The point is we cannot just, as Muslims, be reactionary to an event that takes place. What matters is between events, what is it that we are doing? Between events, when things happen, what is it that we are doing? We should be busy with establishing Islamic institutions other than masajid and schools. We need young people, young sisters, young brothers to take initiative to establish institutions that look after the affairs of the Muslims here and the affairs of the Muslim in the Muslim world. We are one ummah. We need to emphasize this. We are one ummah. The ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is unique. Because what gathers us is the aqeedah, is the belief, and what we are after is justice for humanity. That's what Islam came with. We do not have, and we should not have, or think of that this is a mentality of revenge in this regard. We have seen the people who entered the military bases and enter initially those disciplined fighters. How? I mean, it's all over the internet, the videos of treating the women and the children in the best manner, saying, don't touch them, don't do this, seeing the elderly. And then some people, when the borders were open, some start coming from the streets and they did burn houses, they did this. That's not what Islam is all about. That picture is not acceptable in this regard. And we cannot defend it. That's absolutely not acceptable. Innocent civilians are innocent civilians. Innocent children are innocent children in this regard. We cannot just take, they say, you know, they are doing it to our children, we're going to do it to their children. But they need to know, as expressed by a president of Central American countries, that for the Jewish children to have peace in Palestine, the Palestinian children need to have peace in Palestine. That's obvious in this regard. Inshallah, I'm going to leave the next 7 minutes. We need to finish by 9:30 for question and answer and comments and suggestions, inshallah. I know the subject can take much more time, especially when it comes to, you know, as I said, the rights. But we're going to have a session, inshallah, with the lawyer, hopefully, inshallah, next Friday. Any question or comments or suggestions, inshallah? Yes. Any? Yes, Sahi. Yeah, Brother Atabek, Jazakallah khair. I mean, our subject is about a Muslim in the US, what they can do. What you are talking about is something much bigger, what this ummah can do. And that's a valid question. Our main issue is those governments that are there, that they are against Islam, to start with. So to talk about the Muslim ummah, the bulk of them are really against Islam and what Islam stands for. And some of them are very, very friendly with whoever is against the deen, being it from the Zionist to European and the rest of the world. So your subject is big and it's not what we are talking about. Sister Adila, I want to hear from you. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Can somebody give Sister Adila the... By the way, Sister Adila, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless her age and give her the good health and iman, was a professor for a long time, and mashallah, she is in this field, I would say, an expert. So that's why, you know, I want to hear from her.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for putting me on the spot. I am not an expert in this subject, but I do have a question. I'm just a Muslim trying to, hurting like the rest of us over what is happening and just trying to make dua for our brothers and sisters in occupied Palestine. I guess my question is, what I've heard is that we should just make dua, not necessarily ask the United States or ask the UN to protect us, but we should get together as a people and ask Allah to give us protection. Other than that, I'm not sure what else we can do. We can give our monies and our du'as and just try to practice our religion and stay on the haqq, and so that we can be good examples for how we should carry out our deen. Other than that, I'm not sure what we can do but make dua and go to Allah. I guess that's a general answer, but specifics. And I think what you're saying tonight is we should know our history. We should study the history of what's going on so we can talk to other people about this deen. And you know what basically I've been doing is going online and talking to my family and friends about it and encouraging them, who I think, and growing up in this country, all we hear is that, you know, we should support Israel. And we know there's not even such a place called Israel. So I guess just know our history and continue talking to our parents and our friends about the rights of the Palestinians, about doing what is right. So that's just a general.
How about, can we just a minute, can you go back? The indigenous community here in America is almost 50% of the Muslims, or 40%. It's significant. There is a gap between the indigenous Muslims and the immigrants. And that's an issue, because if we cannot work as Muslims, have a work as Muslims, how do you see this factor being, or this factor taken care of between the immigrant community and the indigenous?
I think we just educate our families. I know many of us indigenous Muslims, we have a Christian background. And so that is one reason they may feel close to is Israel as opposed to Muslims. But we have an obligation as Muslims to teach our families about it. But I think that just because we grew up, many of us, through slavery, our ancestors through slavery, through oppression, through racism, we have a natural affinity for people who have been oppressed. So I think you're going to find many, particularly Muslims who were once Christians that have that background, particularly if they're African American and they grew up in racism and whatnot. I think most of them are on their side because they are basically against oppression, because they went through oppression.
So inshallah, before we close, let's make dua for our brothers and sisters who are under the bombardment in Gaza. اللهم الطف بإخواننا في غزة فيما جرت به المقادير. اللهم الطف بهم فيما جرت به المقادير. اللهم انصرهم على من عاداهم. اللهم خفف عنهم البلاء يا رب العالمين. اللهم اشف مرضاهم، اشف جرحاهم. اللهم تقبلهم في الشهداء يا رب العالمين. اللهم يسر الإفراج عن الأسرى المعتقلين في فلسطين يا رب العالمين، وأعدهم إلى أهلهم غانمين سالمين. اللهم انتقم من الظالمين، انتقم من الصهاينة الملاعين يا رب العالمين. اللهم أبرم لهذه الأمة أمرا رشدا يا رب العالمين. مكن للمؤمنين في الأرض يا رب العالمين. أرنا في الظالمين آية يا رب العالمين. ألطف بنا وبأمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما جرت به المقادير. اللهم لا تعاملنا بما نحن أهله، وعاملنا يا ربي بما أنت أهله، وجعلنا يا ربي في حفظك وفي رعايتك وتحت عينك التي لا تنام يا رب العالمين. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه، والحمد لله.